I'm Wendy Wood with the Key Biscayne Historical and Heritage Society, and we are about to take a historic tour of Crandon Park. And I want to thank Terry for filming it, and Chris for bringing a golf cart, and the Historical Society for actually sponsoring this. It's going to be a bicycle ride. It's going to take a couple hours to go through the whole thing. What we're doing right now is we're standing on the Tequesta Indian Mount. What I want to start with is the name of Crandon, Crandon Park. Does anybody know where the name came from? There was a county commissioner called by the name of Charles Crandon back in 1940, and all this land here was owned by the Matheson, W.J. Matheson. Actually, but at that time, it was the son Hugh and Malcolm and the sister, because the father died in 1930. And Charles Crandon came up with the idea, he was a Dade County commissioner, that we can open up Key Biscayne because the rest of Dade County is developing. I should talk to the Matheson family and see what they say about trading perhaps a bridge out here for a large chunk of land to turn into a park. So he approached them in 1940. They liked the idea because they'd been running this coconut plantation for quite a long time. And they decided, good, we'll give you 808 acres of pristine land in the middle of Key Biscayne, mostly the northern 2/3, and 2 miles of beautiful beach that was nothing developed on it other than the coconuts that had been planted here by the Matheson family. And in exchange, they started building the bridge. But it didn't take long for the war to start in 1941, and with that bombing of the Pearl Harbor. They bombed Pearl Harbor in 1941, and that actually stopped all the construction going on out here. But the deed had been signed, the land had been transferred, and everything was placed on hold. There was a term within this that the Matheson family wanted, and it's very important, and you will hear it every so often come out. There is a conveyance. This conveyance is made upon the express condition that the lands hereby conveyed shall be perpetually used and maintained for public park purposes only. In case the use of said land for park purposes shall be abandoned, the heirs shall be entitled upon their request to have the said lands reconveyed back to them. This is very important because it is what preserves Crandon Park in its almost natural state. Okay, in 1941, they actually started the Virginia Key Causeway. We had Pearl Harbor on December 7th, 1941. Oh, 1942, they actually had German boats going up and down the coast of Florida, all the way up to Rhode Island. And they apparently hit a Mexican oil tanker right outside of Fowley's Rock, blew the thing up, and it shook all of Key Biscayne. It wasn't until after the war, which ended in 45, that they started rebuilding again, or rebuilding the road. And it came up to Crandon Park by 1947, and then by 1951 it ended right here. And we're going to have a bicycle ride through Crandon Park talking about the history of the park. And we'll travel around through the Crandon Zoo, the Carousel, down to the Nature Center, and back up Cabana Road. So come along and join us right now. We are in the old Crandon Zoo now, currently called the Crandon Gardens. And it started back in the 1951, 49, 50, 51. They opened this up as a park to Dade County. Now, it started out just a great big open area. And what happened back then is we used to get traveling circuses every so often throughout the whole United States. They'd prop up their big tent, bring in their dancing horses. They might have a trapeze artist and a couple animals you can look at. So a guy got permission to come out here, set up his tent, and hold a circus. He did all the advertising. He brought his whole crew out. He had it all ready to go. And then it came time for the circus to open up, and he hardly had anybody show up. And he was already financially strapped. He couldn't afford the food for the animals. He couldn't afford to pay the people, so he packed up his circus, put it on the truck, and then he went away and left behind the animals. And that's how we came into our first lion, elephant, and rhinoceros, was from the old circus. Then Dade County realized they had an opportunity. Why don't we turn this into a zoo, a small zoo for the locals, and bring people out to Key Biscayne? People didn't like coming out here. It was a long drive coming to this distant area. So they brought in Galapagos turtles donated by the Matheson family, monkeys, pheasants, and then they started expanding on it. More animals, giraffes came in, and it was opened up to the public, and it was very popular. And when I first arrived here in the 70s, it was free. You could actually just walk in, see the animals, baby giraffes, and go around the old zoo. They also added into this the Children's Amusement Center, which was complete with a carousel and the most amazing old train that used to go all the way around the park here. And you would meet it over in the field next to the ocean at the old Princeton station, climb up on the train, and it would just chug, chug, chug down the little railroad track all the way around the place. It was a lot of fun. Then in 1980, Dade County decided that with all the hurricane warnings that we were getting, we had a long span with warnings but no hurricanes, that it was too risky to actually move all these animals up into a dry area and away from the potential damage from a hurricane. So they actually opened up a great big zoo down in the Homestead area and closed this one down. After that, the carousel was closed down. We didn't have as many people coming out. This whole zoo behind me went to seed. And old-timers can remember when this was just overgrown, messed up, rusting, empty cages, which we'll still see plenty of those around here. And then some ladies from Key Biscayne started coming in with garden clubs and like trimming little areas down and planting more plants. And it started getting more interesting. And then a little more oomph came from Dade County where they started mowing the grass and more plants were brought in. And then a lady by the name of Valerie was heading up bringing in these birds that you'll see all around here. Most of them are not native birds. They're from all over the world. And she'd show up every day and feed these, and we loved it. Then they cleaned the trails out so you could bicycle through here, and it became Crandon Gardens. And it's open to the public now 7 days a week, and it's just ideal for coming in and picnicking here or actually bicycling through here. We occasionally get American crocodiles in the ponds, lots of iguanas, lots of birds. If you ever want to take pictures of birds to paint, we've got ibis, we've got swans, and they're all used to people.
This is the pen where they generally kept an alligator and fed it on certain days during the week, generally Saturday or Sunday mornings. This is the aviary. This was built more recently in the 60s.
We're right now in one of the old bird cages, and what you can't tell when you're standing outside of this cage is the echo that you get right in the center. So if you're coming through the park, get off your bicycle and jump in here and start singing. And if you have a guitar, play a guitar in here or a flute. It's a yodel-doodle-doo. Great. All right. Next stop. And when the bridge fell down after one of the hurricanes, or I think they tore it down, it became unstable, they left the pot of gold. That's the old children's zoo on that side. Now, I saw some surveyors out here just a week ago, and they're actually surveying to rebuild a bridge through here. That's what he said. I said, are you going to rebuild the Rainbow Bridge? And they go, yes. And some of us have photographs of it. I hope they do the rainbow colors.
How cute. I never knew that.
And they had a little petting zoo over there for the kids, and there was a birdhouse over there. I asked, can I bring my kayak in here? And they said, no. So you can't do it. It doesn't. I know it goes pretty far towards the elephant cage, and it goes up towards the parking lot, but I think that's it. This is the remnants of the old Rainbow Bridge, which is going to be reconstructed at some point in the future. But if you follow your eye through the old trail, past the tree, you'll see at the far end a pot of gold. The pot of gold has been there since the old zoo days. It was never removed. The trail goes to the old children's zoo, and to the right was a petting zoo, and to the left was a small bird aviary. And it is planned to be opened up someday for people to go through.
This mound of rock was the centerpiece for the goat and sheep area. It was fenced in, of course, and there was some dwellings in there, and it was fun to go back there because it was right backed up onto this water lake.
We are now near the tiger cages, the lion cages. We've got a large lake behind us, and I want to talk to you about the Matheson family, who actually donated all this land to us and eventually became Crandon Zoo. W.J. Matheson was born in 1856, died in 1930, and he made his money in a chemical dye business that he started. He was very smart, and he had a patent to produce dyes back in the early 1900s. Now, he had a son, Hugh, who worked with him in New York. That's where the factory was, and made a ton of money. But unfortunately for Hugh, he came down with lead poisoning from the dye company. And the doctor said, you've got to get yourself outside where the air is fresh and clear. So the father, W.J. Matheson, had already purchased the northern tip of Key Biscayne, and he had planned, or he was developing a palm tree plantation out here. So we sent Hugh down here. And the good side of that story is that Hugh did get better. He lived till he was a ripe old age. Bruce Matheson was quoted as saying in a magazine article that his great-granddaddy, that's who W.J. Matheson was, he wanted a place to grow tropical plants and fruits as a hobby, but he never really made much money out of it. He loved it. He was a real botanist, horticulturist. He actually brought in many different kinds of trees. Besides the palm trees, he brought in fruit-bearing trees, but they didn't work too well next to the salt water. He brought in eventually 36,000 palm trees into the area, and they did do well. In 1915, he had 42 workers working on this farm. And 5 years later, he had 60 workers working on this farm. Then in 1921, he actually brought in the Malaysian palm tree, which at the time nobody realized how strong and hardy this little palm tree was. But in the 70s, we had the yellow blight take out all the palm trees except the ones that the Malaysian palms, and they survived. So most of the trees around here are from the Malaysian palms. Now, in 1926, shortly after they planted the Malaysian palms, we had the worst hurricane outside of Andrew that came through. It came right over Key Biscayne, and it headed straight towards downtown Miami. Downtown Miami then had mostly Dade County pine buildings in it, didn't have all the big concrete things going on that we have now. And that hurricane just plowed right down Miami and plowed it out. I mean, it knocked everything over. They say there were 117 people that died in that, and over 800 landed in the hospital. This was terrible for the big building boom that had been going on in Miami. Of course, then the land boom collapsed, and then in 1929 the stock market collapsed. So Miami was struggling along. And then, yeah, sounds familiar. Why do you say that?
I don't know.
And then in 1930, to add insult to it, W.J. Matheson also died and left the land here to his 3 children, which in turn, as we said earlier on, in 1940, they exchanged 800 acres with Miami-Dade County, and that became part of the park that we are sitting in right here and now. What you're looking at here are the old tiger and lion cages from the 70s. Now, the people that lived on Key Biscayne will remember that if the wind was blowing the right direction, you could hear these lions roaring early in the morning at feeding time. Roar. Remember that, Doug? Yeah, roar. And it was incredible to hear lions roaring in your backyard. They're examples of old cages, which no zoo would even permit at this point. But they are beautiful to look at. Sort of sad to remember that animals had to live in there, but it's a reminder that this was a very active old zoo at one point.
About the alligators and crocodiles. So I ended up over there, and I went off the beaten path. You know, I think
That's the real gator. That's the real gator.
that's what you have to watch out for. I just got a text from a friend saying, watch out, they're waiting for some imbecile to go right in the middle of a group of alligators. You know those alligators, right?
Yeah.
The stone ones?
Oh, yeah, the ones, yeah.
But I
I
looked,
didn't know that, though.
they looked totally real. I stopped the bike and I was like, what do I do? And I remember seeing a wild, totally real. For me, they look real. Because I had just seen Cujo over here 2 days in a row, and his mouth was open and he didn't move. Cujo is the alligator. I mean, the crocodile here. Yeah, and he never moves, right? I mean, once he gets his, I'm sure he moves, but for at least 2 days, he was in the exact same spot, and his mouth was wide open. So I went over there and I saw these things, and I'm like, they're doing the same thing. They're waiting for me. And then fortunately, I was backing out really slowly, and then, you know, the joke was on me.
This little section here is edible. And this is used for the substance. If you're hiking or walking in the woods, these are edible and provide you enough nourishment to make it one place to another. Original bench markers for Key Biscayne. Now this is on top of the actual marker. The actual marker is underground. It's a column of granite with a hole drilled down the middle of it. There is a brass X mark placed in the middle and poured around lead to center it. And when they excavated that a few years ago, it was exactly on the spot, latitude and longitude, where the earlier maps had said it would be.
This is the Crandon Park Carousel, built in 1949. It is the oldest carousel in South Florida in its original location. There are 30 horses total on the carousel, and about 5 of them are half wood bodies, and their heads and their legs are metal, and then the rest are all aluminum. In about 1996, Jim King, who was the park manager, decided to restore this carousel. It had been closed up for 18 years, and he hired Diana Lucas as the head painter, and she found a lot of volunteers. Most of the horses were painted by the New World School of the Arts students, and thus a lot of the names come from the New World School of the Arts. Richard's just gotten on King Jim. Somebody's penciled in Billy. but in honor of Jim King, who was the park manager of the park at the time. And he is actually the one that gets full credit for opening up the hidden carousel that had been closed for 18 years. And it's Jim King who actually put it all together. Hired all the people to paint and the volunteers. And yeah, you picked the most important one. Lucas is named for Diana Lucas, who was the head painter of the carousel. And she put together the volunteers. Okay, what you're looking at now is Wendy. Wendy is my favorite horse because my name is Wendy. Wendy's a zebra. That is a half and half. The body is wood and the legs and the arms are metal. There's only about 5 horses on the carousel that are built like that. That isn't, they're all original horses, but that is the oldest or one of the oldest original horses. Underneath the belly of the wooden horses is stamped a date. And it'll say 1949 under that. That's when that horse was made.
This marker off of Key Biscayne, if you head north of it straight towards Virginia Key, about 200 yards, you're going to find the Half Moon. That was a wreck that was sunk in 1948, And from the research, it was one of Hitler's race boats that he made. It had a quite unique shape. After the war, it was brought back here, and it was used as a party barge for a while. And it sank offshore here, and the wood was reclaimed. All the decks were taken and was salvaged. But the hull's there. It's a great place to dive on.
What we're looking at now is the fossilized reef off the north side of Key Biscayne at the end of a beautiful wooden boardwalk. And it is actually carbon dated to about 60 AD. The first notation of it was back in about 1850, and in 1950 they did an actual scientific study of it. And it was dubbed the nickname Key Biscayne's fossilized reef, or fossilized or petrified forest. It's actually ancient black mangrove roots that come up out of the ground, and if you get down there on ground level, you can actually see little fingers sticking up from the water line, and then there's the mat of what would have been sand or dirt on the top. The reef is, you're not supposed to dive or snorkel on it because it's so fragile, but I tell you, it's just full of little tiny marine life. It's got sergeant majors, snappers, parrotfish, crabs, shrimps, sea stars, pufferfish, and I hate to say that I actually, not on this reef, but up south a little bit, saw a lionfish, which is devastating to our reefs. There's sandgrass beds all around when you look out where the boats are coming in and out. Dunes behind us, mangroves behind us, red, black, etc. And it's also the home of many birds. We'll see egrets and herons feeding out here quite a lot. To the left is Bear Cut, and Bear Cut separates Virginia Key and Key Biscayne, which used to be connected prior to 1838. Then there was a huge hurricane in 38 that just bore right through in between the two islands, or created two islands, and then we had the sister island of Virginia Key born. Off in the distance, you can see Fisher Island, which is an old DuPont palace, and it has since been developed, and it's a very high-end luxury homes, condominium homes. And then way off in the distance where the high-rise buildings are is the southern tip of Miami Beach. And very often you can see the cruise ships going in and out of Government Cut. It's really beautiful in the evenings to look around here. There is actually a huge buzzard in the top of one of the trees right next to us, an old dead Australian pine. They've been taking out the Australian pines ever since Hurricane Andrew, which had dominated the whole north end of Crandon Park. And if you look over at Virginia Key, you can see that it's still dominated by the Australian pines, which kill all the natural vegetation. With the return of the original vegetation, we have a huge influx of migratory birds, local birds. It's a much healthier environment. Well, thank you for coming on the bicycle ride, and I'd like to thank the Key Biscayne Historical and Heritage Society and Crandon Park that really stretched to get us in through all the little tight spaces, and the people that came along with me. And then we also have this wonderful web page for future events.
Make sure you check kbhistory.com for upcoming events. Thank you.
And thank you. We had a ball. Bye.